My sister pointed straight at my face and shouted loudly, her shrill voice echoing throughout the quiet street. "Throw all her stuff out." Those words hit like a knife falling in broad daylight. Her boyfriend stood upstairs, leaning against the second-floor window frame, looking down with a triumphant smile, the kind of smile from someone who believes they've won the game before the cards are even flipped. My brother leaned against the porch railing, lips curled up, then nodded as if this was just a minor decision that had been discussed long ago. My parents stood behind them, neither stepping forward nor stepping back, just turning their faces away. Absolute silence. No one asked if I was right or wrong. No one needed to hear the truth. I stood there motionless as if my entire body had turned to stone. And in that moment, amid the familiar coldness of those blood-related faces, I realized one small but very clear thing: some of them were starting to feel uneasy. I am Morgan Edwards. And that day in Cape May, New Jersey, my life took a different turn in just one breath. The first suitcase fell onto the trash pile in front of the house, with a heavy thud, dry and resounding, echoing along the old street, lined with silent Victorian houses standing like mute witnesses. My sister didn't even wait for me to step inside the house. She bent down, grabbed the second bag, and shoved it hard down the steps. The bag rolled around, spilling open. Lesson plans, teaching notes, clothes I'd brought during the months I stayed home to care for my parents. Everything lay scattered on the damp grass, the books face down on the ground, pages fluttering in the salty sea breeze, as if they themselves were trying to escape this place. From the second-floor window, the room that once belonged to my grandmother, her boyfriend stood with arms crossed, watching with cold eyes and a small but smug smile, as if he had known the outcome all along. My brother kept his familiar half-smile, the kind he always used when siding with the stronger one. My parents stood right behind them on the wide porch of the ancestral home. Their eyes glanced over me, empty and distant, as if I had never existed in this family. Not a word, not a question, not a single defense. Neighbors began opening their doors and stepping out onto their porches. Phones were raised. Someone across the street had started recording. Whispers carried on the sea breeze reached my ears in fragmented pieces. Is that the Edwards house? What is Chelsea doing? Poor Morgan. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I refused to give them the tragic scene they were hoping for, the one that would make them feel justified. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called the one number I had saved months ago, the number I once thought I would never have to use. The other end picked up immediately. I read out the address, my voice strangely calm. 18 minutes, the man said. Don't say anything. Just wait. My sister slammed the front door shut, believing everything was over. But the truth is, everything was only just beginning. If this story makes you feel the pain, the injustice, and the things that have never been spoken, please leave a comment to let me know your emotions. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is a silent support so that stories like this continue to be told and the truth behind them can be fully heard. The echo of the suitcase falling down the steps still lingered in the air, and I slowly sat down on the trash pile in front of the house and waited. I sat motionless on the curb, knees drawn up quietly, watching my sister Chelsea pace back and forth on the porch as if it were her own personal stage. She kept shouting, her voice carrying far beyond the hedgerows and the iconic white picket fences of Cape May. This house is mine, and Mason's now, she declared, whether anyone was listening or not, arms spread wide. Morgan has clung here long enough. Grandma's been gone a whole year. It's time she found her own place to live. Clung. That word hurt more than the sound of the suitcases hitting the ground. For the past 2 years, I had barely left this house. I took the teaching job at the local high school only because it let me get home by 3 o'clock every day. My life revolved around checking blood pressure, cardiology appointments, sorting pills by day, and midnight drives to the ER when Dad's heart went into arrhythmia again. I learned to cook the low-sodium meals they didn't like, but needed. I slept in the living room so I could hear if Mom woke up in the middle of the night confused about whether she'd taken her medication or not. Meanwhile, Chelsea sent money from Philadelphia twice a year and called it helping. My brother Caleb leaned against the porch column, arms folded across his chest, nodding as if this were the most reasonable conversation in the world. "She's 34 years old, Chelsea," he said loudly, deliberately making sure the neighbors could hear. "She has a stable job, decent salary. If she wants, she can rent an apartment tomorrow." What's stopping her? Nothing, except that I had turned my entire life into a 24-hour nursing shift while they continued living theirs. Chelsea kept going, her pacing growing faster. "I've already talked to the realtor. Property prices in Cape May are insane right now. We list it next month, close by summer, and everyone gets their share." She said everyone as if I weren't standing less than 10 meters away. And in that exact moment, every piece clicked into place in my mind. Her questions last Christmas about real estate values. The way she lingered in Grandma's old room after the funeral opening, every drawer flipping through every stack of papers. The late-night phone calls I'd accidentally overheard when she thought I was asleep. "Yeah, the title's clean. No, the youngest doesn't know anything. We just need to get her out first." I had ignored it all because I didn't want to believe my own sister could sell this house out from under our parents while they were still living in it. Chelsea finally stopped. She planted both hands on her hips and looked straight at me. "By the end of the weekend, you clear out whatever's left. After that, I'm changing the locks." Mason appeared behind her, standing right in the doorway, one hand resting on Chelsea's shoulder as if he belonged there. Caleb stepped away from the column and followed them inside. The front door slammed shut with a sharp, decisive click that echoed down the entire street. I didn't move. I just sat on the suitcase by the curb and waited. The man on the phone had been very clear. 18 minutes later, a black sedan slowly pulled up to the curb. The driver's side door opened. An older man stepped out, tall, with neatly trimmed silver hair, wearing a perfectly pressed gray suit that carried the aura of decades spent standing in courtrooms. In his hand was an old, heavy leather briefcase, as if it contained far more than mere papers. Without hesitation, he strode across the lawn straight toward me. He stopped a few steps away, glanced at the gathering neighbors, then raised his voice just enough for everyone, including those inside the house, to hear clearly. "My name is Victor Stone. I am the attorney representing the estate of Beatrice Lawson, grandmother of Morgan Edwards." The front door flew open almost instantly. Chelsea burst out first, Mason right behind her, then Caleb. Finally, my parents. They clustered together on the porch like a defensive line suddenly thrown into emergency alert. Chelsea didn't waste a single second. "You need to leave immediately," she snapped, pointing directly at Victor. "This is private property. I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't get off our lawn in 10 seconds. Victor Stone didn't flinch. He set the briefcase down on the grass beside me, clicked it open, and pulled out a thick stack of papers secured with a heavy metal clip. He held them up so the sunlight illuminated the official seals. "Actually," he said, his voice calm and precise, "the people currently standing on land that does not belong to them. Are you?" He turned to another page and began reading aloud in the steady, measured tone of someone long accustomed to addressing a courtroom. "Pursuant to the irrevocable trust established and recorded by Beatrice Lawson 2 years ago, full and exclusive ownership of this property, located at 412 Beach Avenue, Cape May, New Jersey, has been transferred solely to her granddaughter, Morgan Edwards. The trust took effect immediately upon recording and is irrevocable." Chelsea's face went ashen in the blink of an eye. She lunged forward, snatched the documents from his hand, and flipped through the pages frantically, her eyes scanning every line, every signature. The color drained completely from her face when she reached the page bearing our grandmother's familiar handwriting right beside the notarized seal. Caleb's mouth opened, but no words emerged. The earlier half-smirk had vanished entirely. He stood frozen, staring at the papers as if they were written in some alien language. For the first time that entire afternoon my parents spoke, but their words were fractured, scattered. "It can't be." My father muttered the sentence left hanging. My mother clung tightly to his arm, whispering over and over, "Beatrice never said. She never said." Her voice trembled on the verge of breaking. Victor Stone continued without raising his voice even slightly. "As of this moment, Morgan Edwards is the sole legal owner. All other parties have no ownership interest whatsoever. You have 72 hours to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises. After that deadline, any continued presence will be considered unlawful trespassing." Chelsea flipped through the pages even faster, as if sheer speed could alter the truth already printed in black ink on white paper. Her breathing came sharp and ragged. Then she looked up at me, the sister she had just evicted, onto the lawn. For the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, only stunned disbelief, and the slow emergence of fear. Victor closed the briefcase with a soft, decisive click. Chelsea gripped the stack of papers so tightly her knuckles turned white. The entire street fell silent. The neighbors who moments ago had been whispering and filming now stood motionless, phones lowered, as if the sheer weight of the moment had stolen their voices. The salty sea breeze drifted through, rustling the pages of my teaching notes still scattered on the grass, but no one stepped forward to pick them up. I remained seated on the suitcase, hands resting calmly in my lap. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, the truth was speaking for itself, and it was louder than any defense I could ever have offered. Victor Stone turned to me. His expression remained professional, but a trace of something warmer flickered across it. Perhaps satisfaction, perhaps respect. "Miss Edwards," he said quietly, "whenever you're ready, we can go inside and discuss the next steps. This house is yours now, fully and legally." Chelsea whipped her head toward him, then back to me. Her lips parted as if to object, but no sound came. Mason placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to pull her back inside, but she shook it off violently. Caleb took half a step forward, then froze, glancing between the documents and our parents, as if waiting for someone else to fix this. Finally, my father found his voice again, hoarse and uncertain. "Beatrice. She never mentioned a trust. She said she'd leave the house to all of us, equally." Victor gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "She may have spoken to you about her wishes, but what she did, what she legally executed, is contained in these documents." Mrs. Lawson was very clear with me. She wanted the person who had cared for her and for this family in her final years to inherit the home. She made separate financial provisions for the other heirs from the rest of her estate, but this house was never to be sold or divided. It was to remain with Morgan. My mother let out a choked sound, half sob, half gasp. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling, as for the first time that day, she truly looked at me. Not past me, not through me, but at me. I met her gaze steadily. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply waited. Chelsea's voice finally broke through, thin and trembling. This can't be real. She wouldn't do this. Not to us. Not to her own children." Victor gently but firmly retrieved the papers from her shaking hands. "It is entirely real, Ms. Edwards. The trust was drafted, signed, witnessed, and recorded in full compliance with New Jersey law. Any attempt to contest it would be costly, protracted, and given the clarity of Mrs. Lawson's intent, almost certainly unsuccessful." He turned back to me. "I have keys," he said, reaching into his suit pocket and producing a small envelope. "Your grandmother asked me to hold on to a set until the time was right." She suspected. Well, she wanted to ensure you would have immediate access when needed. He extended the envelope toward me. I stood slowly brushing grass from my jeans and took it. The paper felt cool and light in my fingers, but it carried more weight than anything Chelsea had ever thrown at me. Behind me, I heard Mason mutter something under his breath, likely about lawyers and appeals, but Chelsea silenced him with a sharp glare. For once, she had nothing left to say. The neighbors began to drift away one by one, sensing that the drama had reached its turning point. Phones were pocketed. Doors closed softly. The street returned to its late afternoon quiet, broken only by the distant cry of seagulls and the rhythmic hush of waves a few blocks away. I looked up at the porch at my family standing there, suddenly diminished against the grand Victorian facade that had always felt like a fortress. Now it was mine alone to protect, to open, or to reshape however I chose. Victor waited patiently beside me. I slipped the new keys into my pocket, then picked up my scattered belongings, one by one, books, lesson plans, clothes, and carefully placed them back into the suitcase. Then, without hurry, I walked up the front steps. Past Chelsea, past Mason, past Caleb, past my parents who instinctively stepped aside as I approached. I paused at the threshold, hand on the doorframe, and turned back to Victor. "Would you like to come in, Mr. Stone? I think we have a lot to discuss." He nodded once. "Yes, Miss Edwards. I believe we do." And with that, I stepped inside into my house for the first time as its true owner. Victor Stone reached into his leather briefcase once more. This time, he pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. On the front, my grandmother's familiar handwriting stood out clearly, neat, firm, unmistakable. He said nothing. He simply handed it to me quietly. I took it. My fingertips brushed the still-sealed edge, and right there on the lawn in front of everyone, I tore the envelope open. Inside was a multi-page letter written in her careful script. The lines toward the end trembled slightly. I recognized it immediately, but they never lost their clarity. Attached was an official bank statement regarding a separate, smaller trust. I unfolded the letter and began reading aloud. My voice stayed steady even as my throat started to tighten. "My dearest Morgan, if you are reading these words, it means Victor has done exactly as I asked, and the day I always feared has finally come. I am sorry you have to face it, but I do not regret having prepared for it. You are the only one who stayed. While the others built their lives far away, you rearranged your entire world to be here. You drove me to every appointment, sat beside me through every test result, held my hand each time the bad news came. Every evening you read me the old detective novels I loved, even when your own eyes were red from teaching 12-hour days. You made sure I never felt alone. I also saw how you cared for your parents quietly, taking on more and more as their health declined. You never complained. You never asked for recognition. That is why this house belongs to you alone. I changed everything legally 2 years ago when I heard Chelsea constantly asking about money, about selling the house, about moving on. I overheard the late-night phone calls when she thought I was asleep. I knew what was coming. This house has been in our family for generations. It deserves to belong to the person who loves it and loves the people who live in it, not to someone who sees it only as a paycheck. In addition, I have left you $50,000 in a separate account. That money came from selling all the jewelry I owned, the rings, the necklaces, the brooch my own mother gave me, everything. I did it quietly last year. Use this money however you need for yourself, for caring for your parents, for whatever lies ahead. This is my way of giving you the freedom I wish I had claimed when I was young. Beatrice Lawson." I paused only long enough to turn to the next page. The second page was shorter, but every word weighed like stone. I knew about the plan to push you out. I knew about the realtor. That is why I hired someone to document everything. I didn't want you to carry that burden while I was still alive. You had carried enough already. This is not punishment. This is protection. For you and for the house that has nurtured all of us. I love you more than these pages can hold. Grandma. The bank notice confirmed it $50,000 had been transferred into an account in my name and my name alone. Silence crashed down over the lawn, heavy, pressing on every breath. Chelsea's face crumpled. She shook her head over and over, tears spilling uncontrollably. No, that's not how it was, she choked out. It's all wrong. It's just a misunderstanding. I wanted to help everyone. I just wanted us all to have a better life. Grandma got it wrong. Her voice broke on the last word. She reached toward me as if to snatch the letter, then froze, hands flying up to cover her face. Mason Cole had already taken several steps back. He stared at the ground, avoiding every pair of eyes now fixed on him. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope. And right at that moment, a silver pickup truck screeched to a halt in front of the house. The brakes screamed, ripping through the silence. And I knew this wasn't over yet. A silver pickup truck screeched to a halt right in front of the house. The shrill scream of tires cut through the heavy air like a blade. The door flew open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. He looked exhausted to the point of collapse. Deep, dark circles etched under his eyes, shoulders slumped as if he'd been carrying a crushing secret for months. Behind him followed another man in a suit holding a thick stack of files. The first man strode straight across the lawn and stopped just in front of our group. His gaze locked onto Mason for several breathless seconds, then he spoke. "I'm Scott Cole." He said, his voice hoarse but tightly controlled. "Mason's husband. On paper, at least. We're still married. The divorce isn't final yet." Mason froze solid. Scott held the stack of files high. "I've been trying to serve him papers for 8 months," he continued. "He's been dodging me, changing phone numbers, moving constantly. But finally, I tracked him down here." He opened the folder, pulled out sheaf after sheaf of papers, and held them up for everyone to see. Court documents from Pennsylvania, disputes over asset transfers, allegations of manipulation and undue influence. Emails from a woman in Delaware detailing how Mason had convinced her to put a beach house she'd inherited in both their names, then disappeared with the mortgage loan. Text message threads following the same familiar script, promises of a future together. Complaints about greedy family pressure to sell quickly so they could start fresh somewhere else. Scott spread everything out on the grass right beside the evidence Victor had presented moments earlier. "This is the 3rd time," he said, his voice steady but ice cold. "Same pattern every time. He targets women with property or family inheritances, plays the devoted partner, pushes to liquidate everything, then vanishes the moment the paperwork is signed." He turned and looked Chelsea directly in the eye. "He chose you because this house is worth a fortune in Cape May. He never intended to stay." Chelsea whipped around to face Mason. "Is it true?" she screamed, her voice trembling. Tell me it isn't." Mason opened his mouth, then closed it. He tried again. "No, it isn't," he stammered. "It's all a misunderstanding. Those exes made it up. You know how it is. People twist the truth." But his eyes wouldn't meet hers, or anyone else's. Scott went on, calm in a way that was almost terrifying. "I have sworn affidavits, bank statements, even photos of him standing with the other women at closing tables. Courts in 2 states have already started reviewing fraud charges." Mason took one step back, then another. His face had gone deathly pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool sea breeze. Chelsea stared at him. Tears still streaked her cheeks, but now they were mixed with something harder, sharper. "You used me," she whispered. "All the plans, all the talk about our life together. It was just for this house." Mason didn't answer. He turned, walked quickly toward the car parked down the street, slipped inside, and sped off without looking back once. Chelsea stood alone in the middle of the lawn watching the car disappear around the corner. Then her legs gave way. Her knees hit the grass. The yard fell into absolute silence, and for the first time that day, the truth had nowhere left to hide. She reached toward me. Her trembling fingers clutched my wrist tightly soaked with tears. "Morgan, please," she sobbed, each word torn from her chest. "I'm sorry. I was wrong, completely wrong. I let debts and stupid dreams lead me. I'll change, I swear. Just give me a chance. Don't make us leave." Tears fell endlessly, soaking the sleeves of her sweater. That face, once so familiar, once so proud, now looked strangely small, like someone who had just lost everything she'd believed was hers. Caleb stepped closer, hands open in front of him, cautious as if approaching something fragile. It was Chelsea's fault," he said, his voice thick and hoarse. "She convinced me we were doing what was best for Mom and Dad in the long run. I believed her because she's always been the one with the plans. But I never wanted you thrown out on the street like this." He glanced at our parents, then back at me, his eyes a mix of pleading and fear. "Let us stay. We'll find another way. After all, we're still family." Finally, my parents stepped down from the porch. Mom was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, her lips trembling. Dad stood beside her, eyes, red-rimmed, shoulders slumped, as if he'd aged 10 years in a single afternoon. Mom spoke first. Her voice shattered. We stayed silent," she admitted. "Because we were afraid of losing Chelsea. She was the one who called on every holiday, the one who always talked about the future. We thought if we defended you, she'd cut us off completely. And we protected the wrong person." Dad nodded slowly, his voice low. "Now we see it. Too late. But we see it. Please, Morgan, don't let us lose you too." They stood there, 4 people who had chosen silence in the moment I needed them most, now begging only because the price of that silence had finally come due. I looked at each of them in turn. Chelsea on her knees in the grass, shoulders hunched. Caleb standing earnestly, hands still outstretched. My parents carrying a regret that was heavier than any apology. I gently pulled my hand from Chelsea's desperate grip. "I've heard everything you just said." I spoke, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me, "but none of it can change what happened today, or the months and years before it." Chelsea started to speak again, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Victor already stated the deadline clearly. 72 hours to gather your personal belongings and leave. That doesn't change. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because this was the final boundary, one I had never been allowed to draw in all these years." I turned toward the house. The front door was still open. The scent of old wood mixed with the salty ocean air drifted out, so familiar it made my heart ache. For years I had entered this place like a guest, quietly, patiently, without the right to decide. I walked past them, past Chelsea still kneeling in the grass, hands empty, past Caleb's outstretched arm reaching in vain, past my parents trying to touch me but not close enough. I climbed the 3 front steps, crossed the threshold, and for the first time in my life, I entered that house as its true owner. The door closed behind me with a soft, firm click, not loud, not dramatic, but enough to end a chapter that had lasted far too long. Through the narrow side window, I saw the neighbors still standing along the sidewalk. No one cheered, no one clapped, just quiet looks, understanding, witnessing, respecting. Mrs. Harlan next door gave a small nod. The couple across the street raised their hands in a silent wave. The truth had spoken, and it didn't need an audience. 1 year later, I stood on that same sidewalk. A sold sign was staked in the front yard, swaying gently in the sea breeze. The house had been sold on my terms, at my timing, in the way I chose. I didn't look back at the old porch. I didn't need to anymore. Because some places aren't meant to be returned to, they're meant to be left behind at the right moment, with a straight back and head held high. And this time, I was the one who decided when the story ended. 1 year later, I stood on that same sidewalk looking at the sold sign staked into the front lawn, like a period placed exactly where it belonged. I had listed the house for sale just 3 months after everything collapsed, not out of haste, but because there was no longer any reason to keep it. Every room carried the echo of that afternoon, the wind rustling through the grass, my parents' averted eyes, and Chelsea's words delivered so smoothly, as if betrayal were merely a financial strategy. That house was no longer a refuge, it had become evidence, and I had no desire to live in a gallery of treacherous memories. The closing was quick and straightforward. A young family from Philadelphia bought it. They fell in love with the wide porch, the carefully preserved old woodwork, the short walk to the beach. They saw potential. I saw the past. I signed the papers, shook hands, and left in the same afternoon. No photos, no looking back. Some things are enough simply to leave at the right moment. I moved to a smaller town 2 hours' drive away, a place where no one knew the weight the Edwards name once carried. The new apartment had no history. The new school had no prying glances. I continued teaching high school English, not out of nostalgia but because teaching demands complete presence, and I needed something that forced me to stand steady every day. The money Grandma left me, the $50,000 from the trust, combined with the proceeds from the sale, I gathered together and placed into a structure as clear and deliberate as the one she had built for me, a scholarship fund named after Beatrice Lawson. No fanfare, no personal branding. The fund was for graduating seniors in Cape May County facing family breakdown, kids dragged down by the mistakes of adults. It covered tuition books and the basic costs, so they wouldn't have to choose between dropping out and survival, simply because no one stepped up at the right time. In the first year, 3 students received scholarships. The following spring, they graduated. One sent me a simple thank you card, short and unadorned. I keep it on my desk as a reminder some endings don't need noise to be right. The week I moved, I cut off all contact with Chelsea, Caleb, David, and Carol. No explanation, no announcement. I blocked numbers, deleted emails, closed every door still ajar. The initial calls came in waves, then tapered off. Handwritten letters lasted a few months. Birthday cards, holiday messages, then nothing. Not because I had won, but because they had run out of ways to reach me. That silence carried no bitter taste of hatred. It was neutral, it was necessary, and it was effective. News travels faster than the sea breeze in a small town. An old colleague told me during one of my visits back for the scholarship ceremony not to visit home, but to fulfill my duty to the fund. Chelsea lost her banking job 6 months later. No official reason was ever stated, but in a small community, reasons rarely need to be written down. Subsequent interviews went nowhere. Debts piled up, loans taken to maintain an image no one believed anymore. The last anyone heard, she was waiting tables on the night shift, living in a rented room. Not tragic. Just consequence. Caleb had co-signed some of those loans. When Chelsea defaulted, creditors came for him. He sold his car, took extra work, scrambled to stay afloat. No one pushed him. He walked into it beside her. My parents downsized to a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Dad's heart condition worsened under prolonged stress. Mom's anxiety turned sleep into a nightly negotiation. They leaned on each other to keep going, but according to mutual acquaintances, regret colored nearly every conversation. No one argued it anymore. It was too obvious. I didn't follow the details further. Not because I didn't know, but because I didn't need to. My life now is clean. I teach. I mentor the scholarship students. I read on weekends on my small porch, one that overlooks only trees and a quiet street. No ocean. No memories. No one enters unless I allow it. Sometimes I think of Grandma, of how she quietly watched, noted, and acted. She didn't punish anyone. She simply protected the person who needed protecting and gave me the power to walk away when the time came. Greed and betrayal from those closest to you don't always demand a dramatic ending. Sometimes the consequence is simply being removed from the life of the person they once took for granted. Cutting ties isn't cruelty, it's a boundary. And boundaries, when firmly held, bring order. The house in Cape May now belongs to strangers. They will make new memories unrelated to me. And the true value of that house, the money, the meaning, the final decision has been transformed into something more enduring: opportunity for children who didn't choose the circumstances they were born into. And I live the rest of my life exactly as she arranged for me, quietly, independently, and no longer needing anyone's permission to move forward.